Иисуса надо сдавать за тол или нет? Виктор? Инчепим? Уважаемые коллеги, уважаемые друзья, я хотел бы поприветствовать вас здесь сегодня и выразить свою благодарность.
Dear friends, dear colleagues, I would like to welcome you here, and I would like to thanks for the opportunity of being here and during the presentation made by our colleagues from Singapore. That was yesterday. We have learned about the extraordinary results achieved by them during their 30 years experience in implementing ICT technologies in their country. Certainly one of the key things that led to this was the application of new technologies. Unfortunately, I do understand very well at what level of development Moldova is today, and in order for us to start the discussion on this issue, I would like to suggest for our colleague Serfeng to give him the floor to present the results of our colleagues from Singapore.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah, please.
I can.
Thank you.
Okay. Welcome. Thanks, everybody at Moldova. Yeah. My name is Peng. Yeah. Okay. What I will share with you today is about how we have progressed from the telecom regulation for the last 20 years. Yeah. And please feel free to ask any question along my presentation. Yeah. Because it's a 1.5 hour long session, so I think we have a lot of time for discussion, and I will share whatever I have and I know with you all. Okay. Sebastian, can you put it to the next slide? Agenda slide. Okay. First, I will briefly talk about competition. You know, how Singapore started our telecom regulation and liberalization. The first thing we wanted to do is how to introduce competition and what are the activities that we've done. Then I will cover the current regulatory regime, the kind of code and act, the legislation that we have that governs our current regulatory regime, and through the last 20 years, okay, through this market liberalization, what have we achieved? And lastly, I will conclude with things that we are looking forward to, because in the telecom landscape, things are always moving very fast, and there are more issues that what Singapore is dealing with, and these are some of the future issues that we are looking at. Slide 3, please. Slide 4. Okay, just a brief history down memory lane about how the telecom market liberalization that took place in Singapore. In Singapore, actually in 1992, we started to do what I call a phased liberalization. Okay, in April 1992, we have a local national telecom operator, Singapore Telecoms, and at that juncture, the government decided that we should corporatize Singapore Telecom, short form as Singtel. That's because previously Singtel was entirely a government-owned entity. I think this happened in most countries where any incumbent telecom operator are largely first started as a government department, government division, and things like that. So in April 1992, the government decided that to do market liberalization, we decided to corporatize, means you privatize what I call Singtel. And as a government, we control in terms of the licensing to allow Singtel to operate. So in 1992, we given Singtel, the local incumbent, a 5-year monopoly to operate mobile services and a 15-year monopoly to operate basic telecom services. Basic telecom services, we are talking about your fixed line, the fax services and things like that. Now, in 1996, just 4 years after we corporatized the incumbent Singtel, there was a rating, and we decided to halve the 15-year monopoly of the Singtel by 7 years. Because in 1992 we given 15-year monopoly, but we decided in 1996 the government said we need to speed up the liberalization, and we decided to give them only shorten the 15 years period to 7 years. So actually that brought forward their monopoly license that will end for basic telecom service to end by March 2000 instead of March 2007. Okay. Then we further look into how to bring in more operators into the Singapore market. And in 1997, we given a license to a second mobile operator called M1, short form for Mobile One. And we also given three other licenses to paging operator, M1, ST Sunpage, and Hutchison Paging. Okay. And in May 1998, we further liberalized the market by getting a second telecom operator, StarHub, to offer basic telecom services. And also at the same juncture, StarHub was also given to the license to operate the mobile services. Questions so far? Okay, slide 5 please. Now, this slide actually explains what was the thinking behind the government, why we want to suddenly advance the liberalization. If you recall, in 1992 we actually given them 15 years of license, but we decided to push forward everything. First, I think it's the country vision to make sure that we stay ahead. And at that, in year 2000, the global pace, we have do a lot of market scan in the Western countries, US, Europe, and realize that the global pace of liberalization is progressing very fast. And so, if we want to be a leading Infocom hub, we must do something more drastic. Second thing is, when you liberalize your market, actually you then attract new players and investment. I think for every developing country, this is very key. Okay, you must provide incentive, rules and regulations to allow foreign direct investment. Also, at that time, the global Infocom industry had changed and is moving very fast. The internet era is here and things like that. So that is also another thinking why we decided to advance our full market liberalization. The other thing which the government think of is that if we took a phased approach, actually one step at a time, it does give a perception that Singapore lacks commitment. So we decided that at this juncture that we need to fully liberalize, we'll go ahead. So there's a strong will by the government to fully liberalize the market. Slide 6 please. Okay, for market liberalization, what does it mean? It means that for any foreign telecom operator who comes in, there's no limit on the foreign entity. Okay, any telco, it can be fully owned by a foreign country, foreign operator. Then there is no limit on the number and type of players that can come into the market. for a market like Singapore, actually is perceived quite small, but we never restrict that you must only have 2 or 3 telecom operator, 2 or 3 mobile operator. Okay, what we welcome people to invest, if they think that there's a market to provide mobile telecom services, they are all free to do so. Okay, so most of the foreign telcos, they will do their business planning, they'll do a market survey and decide whether they want to set up even telecom services in Singapore. Okay, the only restriction we have is, for example, if you want to operate a mobile telecom services, you need spectrum, right? And spectrum are actually limited. So unless there are such constraints, then you will probably limit the number of operators that can bid for that spectrum. So, for example, 3G for mobile services, we can have 10 operators who decided to want to set up a mobile telecom service in Singapore using 3G, but there's limited spectrum, so we'll conduct a market auction approach, and whoever got the spectrum will be given the license to build the mobile network. Okay. Now, also, if any operator, foreign operator, also wants to set up telecom services in Singapore, they are free to decide what kind of network. We will not dictate what kind of network. We will not dictate the facilities. We will not dictate any technology platform. Okay. What we always are concerned is only the quality of service to the consumer. So whatever technology you think that is best suited to deliver your service to a consumer, they are free to implement whatever solution. Slide 7. Okay, now I think this will happen to any country who transit from a full monopoly situation to a full liberalized situation, full market liberalization where you have full telecom competition. All your new entrants, whether small one or whether big company like British Telecom, who have and when they want to offer services in Singapore, they will definitely face strong pressure from the incumbent. So in Singapore context, for example, British Telecom want to introduce services in Singapore, they will definitely encounter a lot of resistance from Singapore Telecom, which is the incumbent. Okay, and there are a lot of interesting stories during my days where I was handling telecom regulation. Is that typical incumbent will exhibit what I call typical incumbent behavior. For example, if you want to apply connection services to, let's say, I'm British Telecom, I want to connect connection services to Singapore Telecoms. People, the person that deal with you, actually will take very long time to process your form, and sometimes you can't inquire status, and there's only one fax number you can inquire status. You can't call and you can't email the person. So typically, any incumbent will try to make things slow for the new entrants, because they know that the new entrants are going to introduce same services as what they are offering. Okay. Now, but unfortunately, new entrants need the incumbent cooperation, because the incumbent, for example, in Singapore, the Singapore Telecom, they have the network all over the island. Their network is reachable to every household, every businesses in Singapore. So, unfortunate thing is that new entrants always must leverage on the incumbent network. Because for new entrants, if they have to duplicate the entire network that, for example, the incumbent has, then that will be a very costly exercise. And some new entrants are actually very small players. Okay. The other thing is, which I explained before, the incumbent actually has no incentive to cooperate. Okay, because they view all the new entrants, other new operator as their competitor. Then, incumbents also, for the last point, incumbents can use market power to restrict competition. For example, the current incumbent actually has all the customer base, right? And sometimes certain services are offered to contract, and so they will have provision in the contract so that consumer is through the contract period and penalties, it's actually very hard to move from the incumbent to the new operator. So these are the challenges that we, as a government, as a regulator, we were thinking through how to solve this. Because you want people to come in to offer service, you want people to invest, but then you have the incumbent, because of they want to protect their base and all kinds of things they will do to restrict competition. So what actually we have done? Can you go to slide number 9? Okay. Actually, what we have done, which still works in the current present day, a few things. One key thing that we set up is what we call a telecom competition code. This is a code that governs how telecom sector in Singapore must behave. Okay, it was issued in September 2000 when we decided to speed up the liberalization effort. But the government don't do this alone, okay? Because we may have the policy thinking, but we may not know what are the operational issues that if we introduce this code, incumbent and even new entrants will face. So this, what I call sector-specific framework, was actually developed in consultation with the industry. We have a very deliberate public consultation exercise. We usually show a draft of the code and ask the industry to comment. Then we'll evaluate the comment and see whether which one makes sense, which one doesn't make sense. This telecom competition code also set the clear boundary of how different players in the telecom market must behave. For example, they cannot do what I call a situation called price squeeze, because, for example, the incumbent, you already have a sunken-in investment throughout the whole island. You actually have a cost advantage. Now, sometimes what you may do is that you purposely price your services much lower than the new entrants, deliberately, so that you actually intend to incur losses, or you may cross-subsidize some other unit so that they can compete with the new entrants. Now, so the telecom competition code actually guards such behavior, and any new entrant that found this behavior that exhibited by the incumbent, they can complain to the regulator and we can do an investigation. So these are the things that we watch out for. And of course, one of the key aim of this telecom competition code is to make sure that we allow new entrants to join in the telecom market as soon as possible, get their business up, get their network up, and start offering services. And then when you have more and more new entrants coming into the market fast enough, then you introduce competition. For the telecom competition code, now we know that things are always changing. The telecom landscape are changing. So when we first set up the first code, we also put the responsibility on the regulator ourselves that we must review the code every 3 years. In fact, sometimes if we are late in reviewing, the industry people will complain. Why are you taking so long to review? Because in the telecom sector, things move very fast. So there must be a responsibility on the government side as a regulator to make sure that you do the review of the code every 3 years. So the last code was actually revised in 2005. Actually, we are now in the process of doing a third round of revision. Slide number 10. Okay, the key regulatory principles for this telecom competition code are as follows. First of all, it's a reliance on market forces. Okay, if we think that if the market market here, I will mean that whether a fixed line market, mobile telecom market, international core market, these are what I call the different specific market. If they are competitive, meaning there are enough players in that specific market, for example, in Singapore, mobile telecom services like handphone services are very competitive. So what we will then do is to make sure we have less intervention, okay? Because when the market is competitive, all the operator will know how to make sure they'll react to each other's offering. They will think about the consumer because they want to get the market base. So there is very little need for the regulator to intervene. But we do need to watch out for any consumer protection in case there are other unreasonable, let's say, contract length and things like that. Okay, so if the market is competitive, as a regulator, we seldom intervene. And this is one key principle that we put into the Telecom Competition Code. Now, if the market is not competitive, for example, fixed line market, the normal home residential line market, in Singapore is still largely controlled by the incumbent called Singtel. These are the time that the regulator will look into, scrutinize every of their service offering very, very carefully. But we do know that as a regulator, if you impose a lot more rules and regulation on, let's say, fixed line market, it's also cost to the player. Now, whether it's an incumbent or a new entrant, if you impose more regulation, you are actually imposing more cost. So what we in telecom regulatory, we have this concept called ex ante, before the fact, or ex post. Ex ante means if you think through some of the competition issue that will be happen, and you actually prescribe it in the Telecom Competition Code. Ex post means when things happen, then you take enforcement action. So there's a balance on this. But the key thing is that if the market is not competitive, as the regulator, you actually spend more time scrutinizing what are the things that the different operators are doing. Okay, and lastly, also in the Telecom Competition Code, we practice what I call asymmetric regulation, meaning the dominant licensee, which is now the incumbent, are actually subjected to a lot of more heavier regulation. For example, any of their tariff, if they roll out new services to businesses, new services to fixed line, home, all their tariff has to be approved by the regulator. Slide 11, please. Other key regulatory principles in the Telecom Competition Code are such. Okay. First, also we have to make sure the Telecom Competition Code promote effective and sustainable competition, meaning you eliminate any barriers to entry. Then, what Singapore do also emphasize on facility-based competition. Facility-based competition means we encourage the telecom operator to invest in infrastructure in Singapore. So, for example, Verizon, British Telecom, when they come to Singapore to offer services, telecom services to the corporate account, we encourage them to lay their own fiber to, let's say, the business segment and things like that. So the moment all these telecom operators invest in infrastructure into the country, the thinking is that they will stay because it's sunken investment. They will want to make it work. So then this is sustainable. Okay, so in Singapore, this is what it meant by emphasis towards facility-based competition. Then the Telecom Competition Code also makes sure that whatever the operator introduce are technology neutral. In the code, we don't specify what kind of solution that they must use. The last point is actually also very important: efficient, transparent, and reasoned decision making. Now, as a regulator, we will often come up with new rules and regulations governing the telecom sector. Now, how do we come up with such rules and regulations? We must be very, very transparent. So what we do is that every time if there's a new thing that we are thinking of, like for example, how does operator offer voice over IP, we will set the policy thinking. We will actually then issue some preliminary decision to the industry in terms of, let's say, for example, how different operators can interconnect, how they charge each other to offer voice over IP services. Now, then we'll ask for views from the industry, and when the views come back, we'll evaluate, and then when we make a certain decision, we publish that decision. Okay? And all the comments that we receive and all the decisions we make are all always published out in the public domain on our website. Any operator who thinks that our decision is not good enough, it impact their business, there is another framework for them to even write in and appeal to our decision to be changed. And then we can think through whether we want to allow that process to happen. If we allow that process to happen, we'll gather more comments. Now, even we make a final decision again and the decision is the same, the Telecom Competition Code allow any of the operator who is still impacted by the decision we make to appeal to the minister. Okay? And when the minister decides that is the final one, and the minister will act in a transparent way by making sure that IDA, the regulator who makes that decision, what is your thinking behind, the operator who has been impacted by our decision, what are their business cases, and this will be decided by the minister. So this is an illustration of how we make sure that every decision we make are transparent and there's a reason behind it. Okay, whether be it for the economy, for the consumer, so they are all these are explained in detail. Next slide, slide 12. Okay, this introduced another concept called interconnection, and there's this specific document called RIO, short form for Reference Interconnect Offer. Now, just imagine if I'm a new operator coming to the Singapore market. I do not have that extensive network as Singtel, let's say they have all the copper network and fiber laid all around Singapore, and I'm just British Telecom. I want to serve my corporate customer, let's say in a certain business area. I need to tap on their infrastructure so that I can deliver service to them. Now, without this document called Reference Interconnect Offer, the incumbent like Singtel can choose not to cooperate and can choose to quote a very high price for, let's say, British Telecom to interconnect. So what happened is that in Singapore, we came up with this document called Reference Interconnect Offer, is to make sure the incumbent provide the prices, terms, and conditions that they must offer for interconnection to any new entrant. They must do. If they don't do, they'll be subject to enforcement. So their price, terms, and condition is published in the open, and their price, terms, and condition is scrutinized by the regulator to make sure that this document, any new operator can use this document to negotiate, or in fact we have done the negotiation on behalf of the new operator. So they can just take this Reference Interconnect Offer and say, Singtel, I need to connect, I need to use these services, these are the price, terms, and conditions that's already approved by the regulator, you must offer. Okay. Now, so this RIO is a requirement that dominant licensee must provide, and hence it will facilitate the new entrants to come and connect into, let's say, Singtel network and other people's network so that services can be offered. Also, the rail is subject to review every 3 years. Okay, so this is again a discipline that we place on ourselves to make sure that this reference interconnect offer is up to date. Slide 13. Okay, that's the cover slide. Slide 14. Now, this slide just to show you through the last about 20 years of market liberalization effort, we are seeing, we are reaping the fruits of our market liberalization effort in the sense that we have now 41 facility-based operators. Facility-based, as I explained, these are operators that will sunk in investment and deploy infrastructure in Singapore. So that is, and these are all the international players like, you know, AT&T, British Telecom, Cable and Wireless. Yeah. Now, we have also 942 service-based operators. Service-based operators are people who will just offer the solution on top of the infrastructure. For example, they may use Singtel's, like for example, voice over IP operator. They can actually use any of the operators' infrastructure, like for example Singtel, and they just offer voice over IP services. So this is what I call service-based operator. And in 2000, we only have 414. Now it has coming to almost 1,000 service-based operators. So to the consumer, to the corporate businesses, there are so many licensees, operators they can choose from. So they can actually then have a quote, and there are a lot more operators who are willing to quote in terms of what their requirement is. Now, also because of this market liberalization, we have in Singapore, we have a lot submarine cable connection to different countries in the world, and our total submarine cable capacity is about 28 terabytes. Okay. Slide 15. As a result of the market liberalization, we also generated more investment, more jobs, because there are more operators that come to invest in Singapore. So our telecom, infocom industry revenue has grown from 25.93 million to 58.10 million. Total infocom manpower grew from 105,000 to 139,000. Later on, at the following session, two of my colleagues will be briefing you about how we create the industry development, how we create the manpower development. And with market liberalization, with more operators offering services, Singapore has one of the highest mobile phone penetration rate. In fact, at September 2009, it stands at 134.5%. So typically, you may wonder how come it's more than 100%, because some businessmen actually carry two phones. Okay. In terms of household broadband, now in Singapore, almost every household has internet connection, and some even household have more than one internet connection. So we actually have now 128.7% household broadband connection. Now, also with more players, more competition, actually it lowers prices. Okay. One very good example was international call from Singapore outside to other countries. It actually fall by more than 90% since 2000. And for companies who use international lease line, the rates also have been falling because of competition. Slide 16. Okay, this is my conclusion slide. Now, as I said, the telecoms landscape is forever changing. We now live in a globalized world. Technology are advancing very fast. So we always make sure that we have to overcome some of these challenges, and these are things that always constantly remind us what to do. Like for example, just to make sure that we must ensure fair play. So the code is forever updated to guide the market. Then we want to promote multiplayer environment. So there are such other initiatives like, for example, number portability. This is a very familiar concept in the mobile market where I have a number tied to an operator. Okay. Now, if I want to switch operator, I need not have to change my number. Okay. We introduce such initiatives so that it allows competition. So as a consumer, I'm not forever tied to one operator. I can go and switch to another operator. Of course, the caveat is that if there is a contract, then you must make sure that you fulfill your contract then before you switch operator. Also, we have to ensure fair interconnection. There are multiple players, and then all network needs to talk to each other. We must make sure there's an interconnection regime that is fair. Then, of course, we are continuing facilitating new players to come into the market. Okay, so we have documents like rail to lower entry barriers. Slide 18. Okay, looking ahead, these are some of the challenges that Singapore will be facing. The whole wide world actually now are talking more and more about next generation broadband network, next generation ICT technology. Typically, when you talk about next generation, you're talking about offering more and more higher speed. In Singapore, for the last 2 years, we have been working on another project called the Next Generation Broadband Network. This is an ambitious plan for us to wire the whole island, every household in Singapore with fiber, instead of the usual copper network that you see. Now, with fiber network to the home, you are able to offer speed up to 1 gigabit per second, and we can literally have video conferencing with anybody in the world. We can have high definition video streaming and things like that. And this project is an ambitious one because we plan to wire out the whole Singapore by 2012, about 2 years from now. Okay, and with that, actually, then with the high-speed infrastructure laid in place, we hope that it will introduce more and more applications. For example, telemedicine, video conferencing, cloud computing, things like that, even for corporate. Next challenges we are looking at is convergent services. Now, for example, you will realize that the traditional telco area where, for example, they are providing mobile telephone, you used to use mobile phone for voice call. Now you can use a mobile telephone to surf internet, to watch TV. So in terms of convergent content, the broadcasting media are now merging with telecom sector. So there's this thinking about how to handle broadcasting regime versus telecom regime. Then the latest hit kind of application that in Singapore people are talking about is IPTV, where you deliver TV content not through your airwave broadcast or cable network, but even through a normal IT network. Okay, and so these are things that we are constantly being faced, and as a regulator, we are looking at all these issues and see how we can promote such service to flourish in Singapore. Okay, with that, I end my presentation. I'm free to take any questions.
Кех, огромное спасибо за столь профессиональную и качественную презентацию.
Thank you for this professional presentation. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Окей. Для того, чтобы транспарентно.
In order for us to start discussing in a transparent way, I will give the floor to the Deputy of the National Regulatory Body in Telecommunications that will make a brief presentation of the situation on our market so that we can discuss both at the same time your situation and our situation.
Okay, fine.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. I will try to briefly describe the situation on the Moldovan market, Moldova telecom market, and we'll start with the following. Actually, the history of the agency starts in 2000 when the basic telecom law was modified. The former law was adopted in 1995. So in 2000, by the modification of the law and approving a government decision in August 2000, our National Regulatory Agency in Telecommunications and Informatics was established. Later on in 2001, we have developed a policy in telecommunications, and that policy specified the liberalization of the market should start as soon as possible, which happened in 2004. Starting with 2004, the telecom market of Republic of Moldova is fully liberalized. What do I mean by that? We mean that Telecom, the national telecom company, had the priority for international access. And starting with 2004, all the operators on the market can provide international services. This especially is true about the mobile operator. And after that, they could also have provide international phone connection. After 2004, the new law on telecom was promoted. That was based on 4 European directives. The name of the agency was changed, and according to the new law, the agency has received new responsibilities and new rights in order to promote and to implement the policies and strategy in the area of telecommunications and informatics. I could briefly say that the main actions or tasks of the agency which actually consist of monitoring the supplies on the market, promoting competition, ensuring access to networks and services, ensuring interconnections, promoting a universal service. All of these are the main competences of the agency that are stipulated by the current law. Today, the agency can describe several circumstances that do not allow efficient competition on the market. First of all, it is the access to infrastructure. This means not only access to associated facilities, but also to sewage, pillars, of the suppliers' facilities in order to ensure interconnections and providing services by new operators. Another situation is that switching to the new law, to a new legal framework, the agency has detailed to a great extent the procedure of regulating the market, which means that for a provider to be able to provide services, to have access to the market, it has to be interconnected. And in order to do that, to obtain that, the agency has to make a market analysis, and the result, the outcome of that analysis leads to identifying the relevant market, and subsequently we seek the operator that has significant power on this market, and we stipulate some obligations, and these obligations actually lead to promoting competition and the development of the sector. But also it means other things that are related to calculating costs. Not all the interconnection conditions lead only to connection itself. There are also financial issues. The models used to calculate costs are, as we all know, very sophisticated, and they require time. Together with our team, we have started working on these cost models, and in the next year we will try to achieve this at least at the level of the model. We think these are the perspectives for developing the competition on the market. First of all, is a market analysis imposing ex-ante obligations to providers that will be identified as powerful operators. The model for calculating costs based on FLL-like methodology. At the same time, for large operators that are vertically integrated, it is necessary to impose the obligation to separate accounting, record keeping, and as we have mentioned, a great issue on the Moldovan market is access to infrastructure, including to the loop, the local and sub-local loop. The next stage is going to be the implementation of the mechanism for ensuring universal access and also number portability. The next slide. I'd like to say that at the end of 2008, Republic of Moldova was classified, was rated in the top of European countries, before such countries as Romania, Ukraine, Lithuania, Czech Republic. You can see that the penetration level for landlines has reached 32%, and mobile phones, even though we had a great investment in the network and the increase of the number of subscriptions in the past years, but the penetration level remains at 67%. Again, I emphasize this is data for the end of 2008. As to the internet access, I mean data transmission and internet access, we have a rather minor position with 3.2%. So this was the situation at the end of the past year. If we look at the market evolution for the 9 months of the current month, we could see that the fixed telephony has increased to 31.7%, mobile telephony reached 76.1%, and data transport and internet reached 4.6% for broadband internet, and the mobile services subscribers have reached 74% with internet access using mobile telephony services. Briefly, I have described the situation so that we have more time for discussions, for consultations, so that we can understand how we should proceed in the nearest future. Thank you to the rapporteurs. I would like also to add that in 2008 in the Republic of Moldova we had three operators in Moldova who have received the licenses to provide 3G services, and we have reached rather good results on this market. Now I would like for us to start discussing. The only thing I wanted to do first is to ask Mr. Kerr about such a small detail that we want to have clarified. What is the authorized body in Singapore that determines the regulation in the telecom sector? Is it an entity that belongs to IDA, or is it a separate agency that deals with this kind of issues?
Okay, in Singapore, the regulator is actually a division inside IDA. Actually, the IDA has two roles: the regulatory role and the e-government role, where you promote all the IT initiative in the public sector. So this is quite a unique way, because I think in other countries I've seen the regulator will purely do regulatory function, and the IT e-government is a different sector. It's different agency, sorry. So to answer your question, the IDA is also the regulator.
Окей. Да, я сейчас предлагаю передать слово моим коллегам, у кого возникли какие вопросы по данной тематике.
So now I'd like to give the floor to my colleagues and see if they have some questions, and now ask questions.
Thank you for coherent presentation, but I think that the answer to the question that okay, I am Dona Shkola, the Vice Ministry of ICT, sorry, ICT in Moldova, yes. I think that the concept of combining the e-governance role and the regulation in one institution, it's very unusual and not very clear for us, because we used to think about regulation function as something aside of the government. We worked a lot to ensure the independence of this agency of regulation, and the question in this respect would be how you succeed to ensure the independence of the regulation and combine it with the e-governance function in one institution. As we know from the yesterday discussion, the IDA is subordinated in different ways, but it's still subordinated to two ministries within the government. So this particular part, which is regulation, is probably somehow stays aside, or so the main issue is how you ensure the independence for the regulation part or regulation responsibility of the IDA. Thanks.
Okay. Yes, I think this is a common question that every other country asks about us. Now, for the regulatory part, we specifically look after the telecom sector. But we also think that besides regulating, we should also promote the industry. And so every time when we do the regulatory function role, we have the overall objective to see that the IT sector in Singapore must grow also. So I give you an example. voice over IP services. For example, if you think that there is a market potential for all the IT industry to leverage on voice IP services, and like for example, even government agencies can use voice over IP services and things like that. We will look at how to introduce regulation to make sure that the various players have a level playing field to introduce such services, and then such services can then be introduced to the market, the consumer, the business, and the government. Yeah, so that is how we see we play a complementary role. Does that answer your question?
Partially, yes, but the issue here, just the issue here is that there is a strong state interest in the telecom players in Moldova still. Even we have officially announced liberalization in January 2004, the situation didn't change a lot during these 5 years. The issue we are facing along these years is that it's very difficult, even for the independent regulator, it's very difficult to act according to the law, because in some of its action it would hurt state interest, being a bigger investor in big investor in telecom sector. So in your case, this didn't exist from the very beginning, because you start in the right way, so you start to demonopolize seriously and decisively the market, and then you understand the market, and you understand the government being a regulator on the market in a correct way, because normally the government will regulate the market only in case of market faults. And in our case, the government is still very interested in keeping a certain level of profitability of the incumbent, because somehow there is a dependence of this between this result and the state budget, and as a result, the regulator is not free in executing the law, and in certain situation is waiting for some so-called political decision of, for example, unbundling local loop or sharing access to their infrastructure or other things. It is obliged already to do according to the law, but it's still not doing that because there is a fear of hurting interest of state being an investor in the market.
I think you are right in saying that we started the correct step, because when we go for full market liberalization, the government decided to make sure that the market, the player, will operate the telecom infrastructure in Singapore. And Singtel was originally a fully state-owned enterprise. But over the years, the government reduces its stake in this operator, and then left it for even foreign investors to invest in the company. Yeah, so state interest in the telecom market, the incumbent is very minimal. The only thing that the government is always concerned will be on security, national security, on consumer protection. if let's say whichever operator behave unreasonably, anti-competitive behavior that will hurt consumer. Yeah. So of course I won't be able to comment the political situation in Moldova, but I think that is a first step that the state need to let go of its interest in the incumbent, or so that then as a regulator you can then be empowered to police the market behavior. Yeah.
One question. One question connected to that: how the role of stake owner of the government is executed within different telecom operators. I understand that you have some investments in telecom.
Yeah, we have some investment in telecom, but these are not directly government owned. These are what I call a government linked company, and their interest is more economic returns. They do not, they do not interfere in the day-to-day operation of the telecom operator. So we have government-linked company who owns some of the telecom operator, but it's purely to make sure that whatever investment they place in reap benefit, but they would not interfere the operation. And hence, me as a regulator, let's say, if I need to make sure that the incumbent unbundle the local loop, I have the full authority, I have the power empowered by the Telecom Act, Telecom Competition Code, to make sure the incumbent provide unbundled local loop. I saw some of the slides that say that you're having problem getting access on the last mile. Yeah, that's a typical problem that the incumbent will impose to any operator. And I mentioned that we had this document called Reference Interconnect Offer that is imposed on the telecom, the incumbent, to make sure that they provide the last mile access, which we deem as bottleneck. And the cost calculation, the prices, is what you have stated in your slide, forward-looking lyric cost model, and that are published, and that the incumbent must comply and offer. Otherwise, we have been empowered by the government to take enforcement action. And the government, because the government don't have any majority stake in the telecom operator, so there's no conflict of interest.
Спасибо, господин Кех. У кого еще?
Thank you, Mr. Keh. Do any of you have questions? Please, Mr. Makedon, ask your question.
Hello to everybody. My name is Alexander. I'm a member of board of Association of Private Companies. Also, I'm general manager of private communication company. And I founded this company 6 years ago. And for the 6 years, we have a lot of problems in the telecommunication sector. And these problems we're facing because of the, as Donna said, of the political interest of the government, of everybody who is in the top of the country. The political interest of supplying the budget, the money and all this is coming from telecom. And thus for the pure competition will decrease the income to budget. And what we are facing that we want competition, we want to change something, but no political, how it's called? Yes, will. Yes, the political will. It doesn't exist. So what we are doing now, we are investing our money. We invest already 10 million euro in the communication. We are building the infrastructure. We are doing everything, but all these are the extra costs of the services. We don't have the infrastructure inside the roads, for example. We don't have the infrastructure on the highways. We cannot do this because everything is blocked. But with new government, we hope that we want to change our mentality. We want to change, and therefore we invite you to say, and thank you for your presentation and the way how you are doing right in the Singapore. And we hope that we change also the situation in Moldova. Now we are speaking, I told about the fixed market, broadband market. The same situation can be in the mobile, because if somebody new wants to enter the mobile market, it cannot compete, because a lot of people have already telephone numbers. And it's very difficult to compete with the big operators in mobile market. And that's why I would like to also to propose this number portability that it's speaking about. But so we would like also to develop our network, and not just my company and another companies, where a lot of companies in villages, because everybody is telling that just telecom investing in villages, and we don't have infrastructure, and that's for in villages the costs are very high, and to build the infrastructure we also have to invest not millions but billions already of euros or dollars. And the price policy at telecom is very high. It's not fair, because they can provide, for example, for €5 access to local loop, and also for the €5 already the services. And we need to provide in villages, for example, to pay the access for local loop, and then the transport to the village. That is 100,000 more higher than the prices of the local loop. Okay, I'm representing about 20 companies in this sector, and I would like for a presentation. Thank you, and we hope to change the situation with the presentation. Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much for your comment. Yeah, my assessment is that the first thing is the political will to see competition happen. So we need the government to be enlightened and say that by introducing all this, by reducing its stake in, let's say, even the telecom market, you actually will encourage competition, and overall the whole country will benefit. Yeah, that is the first key thinking that all these years that I encountered that forward-looking government will do, because it wants the whole country to progress. Once that sets the stage, and the other legislation policy framework can fall in place, of course it won't be an easy journey, because even if the government reduces its stake of the telecom operator, as a regulator you must be empowered with the right legislation and power to take enforcement action, and of course, and to encourage fair play. And also sometimes as a regulator, we also must make sure that our incumbent also can survive. Sometimes you may over-regulate the incumbent until that they themselves can't survive. But we, as a regulator, we always try to play a balancing act, because other operator could be foreign operator. Although they have invested in Singapore, but anytime they may pull out also. Whereas your incumbent is actually your own local player, so there's always a need to also balance the in terms of regulation imposed on incumbent. Yeah, I do appreciate that. I think there is a lot more need to be done in Moldova in terms of even local loop access. Number portability is if you want to enable competition in mobile sector, number portability is actually very, very key. In Singapore, we were the first in the world to introduce number portability. If that what I recall is correct, in 1997. We noticed that for mobile operator to compete with each other, we must allow any mobile phone user to move from operator to operator. So what we have did in 1997 is also to make sure that we set the rules and regulations, the framework, that all the mobile operator must offer number portability. And we actually work very closely with the three operators to make sure that the solution is implemented. Now, it's easy to set the framework and say you must have number portability. But I think it is more important that the regulator work together with the various players in the market, set in motion the framework that you have set up and go into action plan. For example, the number portability, what we have done is that we actually make sure that all the operator has formed committee with the regulator and we look through the issue. And as a regulator, you are the independent party because your role is just to make sure that number portability is activated, implemented so that competition will happen. So you will play the judge role in terms of where different operators will have suggest different things to how to implement the number portability because of their own interest. You have to be the independent, impartial judge to make sure that there's a level playing field. So in Singapore, I think I'm fortunate that at least we work closely with the operator. We don't just set out a framework and say that's the framework, do it. We do work very closely with the operator to make sure things move. Otherwise, if you set a framework and just say do it, 10 years down the road, nothing happens. So this is my piece of advice to you all, and hopefully there are more that we can discuss in the future.
Спасибо, господин Кох. Спасибо.
Thank you, Mr. Koch. Thank you, Mr. Macedon. As the director of the national agency, I want to say a few words about this. Indeed, we have a problem with political will. We have a problem with the current situation on the market. But today, the agency is very clear in calling on the operators about the directions of its activity. You can read about this on the website of the agency. Probably you know we have a joint project with the BRD, and together with their experts we are working on the market analysis. Currently the main tool for making order is to define markets and to define competition influence. These works are underway today, and we hope that by the end of the year we'll have certain outcomes. I don't want to say that you need to have more patience because we'll be waiting for this for a long time. Another issue that we have discussed today is access to infrastructure, and today the agency also analyzes normative framework in this relation, also develops proposals for developing standards in this area, and in the nearest future will be very actively involved in this area. We have materials developed, and if you need more information, please approach the agency. Is there anybody else who has questions?
My name is Vitaly Yurka. I'm with Monster's local incumbent.
Eu sunt Vitalie Iurca și reprezint Moltelecomul, companie de stat locală, despre care am discutat astăzi. Eu am impresia că Moltelecomul nu este prezentat corect ce se întâmplă pe piață, care este rolul Moltelecomului pe piață. Cineva vrea să prezinte Moltelecom ca un monstru care controlează absolut tot, nu întregul stat al Republicii Moldova și întregul guvern al Republicii Moldova. Din 1999, de când a fost creat Moltelecomul. Eu sunt destul de surprins că nimeni nu a menționat rolul sistemului Moltelecomului, în special în cadrul implementării Programului Național de Telefonizare. Niciunul din colegii mei nu a început să lucreze asupra dezvoltării infrastructurii rurale. Aceasta a fost sarcina Moltelecomului și în ultimii 8 ani Moltelecom a investit mai mult de 400 de milioane de dolari în infrastructură rurală. Nimeni, cel puțin atât timp cât eu am fost aici, că în prezent tarifele pentru apelurile locale nu sunt încă echilibrate, balansate și aceasta rezultă în mare parte o opțiune de a recupera pierderile pe baza apelurilor locale, pe baza celor internaționale. Eu cred că această problemă trebuie să fie soluționată pentru a asigura dezvoltarea pieței locală, inclusiv atractivitatea pentru investiții, nu numai de către Telecom, nu numai de operatori existenți de pe piață, dar și pentru ca investițiile în acest sector să fie recuperabile. În prezent, aproximativ 30 milioane care sunt generate de către apelurile locale sunt acoperite de apelurile internaționale și de alte servicii. Eu consider că această problemă va fi soluționată parțial în 2010-2011 pentru că este necesar să se întreprindă pași treptat pentru a soluționa această problemă. De asemenea, este important de clarificat plata pentru conexiune pentru operatorii fixi și mobili. Noi primim 3.9 cenți și în același timp noi plătim Orange, Moldcel și altor operatori 7 cenți. Aceasta duce la o discrepanță de aproape 6 milioane de dolari pe an. Da, există probleme cu interconexiunile, există probleme cu ultima milă, există probleme cu accesul la infrastructura locală, dar ca manager general al companiei pot să vă asigur că toate aceste subiecte se discută în prezent. Noi analizăm opțiunile de a da acces la operatori alternativi la infrastructura noastră, deoarece este mai rezonabil pentru noi să asigurăm acest acces la infrastructura noastră, pentru a asigura un preț competitiv, decât ca Starnetul să se înceapă să-și construiască o rețeaua de fibră optică prin rețeaua de trolebuze și așa mai departe. Cred că aici tot agenția trebuie să se implice pentru a asigura calitatea serviciilor oferite de alți operatori. Noi, pe partea noastră, sunt foarte pregătim să oferim acces la infrastructura noastră și ca să nu se continue ca să asigurăm dezvoltarea calitativă a pieței. Probabil colegii mei știu că începând cu noiembrie-decembrie, Telecom a prezentat prețul la serviciile de internet tuturor actorilor pentru a arăta că noi suntem gata să ne dezvoltăm. Totuși, în acest caz trebuie să clarificăm cine va investi în dezvoltare continuă și asigurarea accesului pentru tuturor cetățenilor care doresc să aibă acces la liniile de telefonie și la internet. Cine va avea acest rol? În prezent, majoritatea banilor sunt investiți de Telecom, asta e clar. De aceea, noi trebuie să continuăm și majoritatea profitului care este generat de Telecom este reinvestit înapoi în dezvoltarea industriei telecomului. Da, o parte din ele se duce în bugetul de stat, dar cea mai mare parte a profitului este reinvestită de proprietar, în cazul dat de stat, în dezvoltarea industriei telecomunicațiilor. Eu consider că este necesar să se continue aceste discuții cu operatorii privați, să se găsească o soluție comună împreună cu Agenția de Reglementare, care este organul de reglementare în țara noastră, și să găsească un echilibru pentru a satisface interesele tuturor părților. Întrebarea mea cheie este în rezultatul acestor reglementări, ce se va întâmpla cu buzunarul consumatorilor noștri? Serviciile vor deveni mai ieftine și mai accesibile sau nu? Dacă nu, atunci să vedem care este rezultatul final tuturor acestor măsuri, pentru că consumatorul vrea să aibă calitate mai bună, servicii mai ieftine și tot așa. Și noi împreună trebuie să ne asigurăm că se întâmplă anume așa. Deoarece în prezent noi vorbim astăzi despre reglementare. Eu consider că Moltelecom în prezent este cea mai reglementată companie. Noi nu putem schimba tarifele pentru apelurile locale, ceea ce înseamnă că este un impediment pentru alți operatori de pe piață. Cum putem să oferim un pachet de plin de serviciu clienților noștri dacă noi nu putem să schimbăm prețurile pentru apelurile locale? Există problema, dar eu consider că toți împreună ne putem să găsim soluții.
Друзья мои, дело в том, что если мы будем втягиваться, то есть градус дискуссии говорит о том, что проблемы существуют на всех уровнях. И если мы сейчас втянемся в...
That we have issues on all levels, and if we're trying to seek problems, answers to all of them, it's going to be difficult. We understand that we have problems at the political level, at the operator level, and etc. But we won't be able to do this today. The only thing is that the agency expects proposal for the change of tariffs in September, and I want to give the floor to our colleague Nava Savatero.
I had quite a few comments to provide, but since we're running late, I only want to ask one question to our colleagues from Singapore, because I think it's an interesting development that we all need to look forward to, which is the development of the next generation network, and how the Singapore government is playing a big role in this. So I'd like to ask you, Mr. Kwe, whether you could elaborate a bit more on how you're building this next generation network. What is the role of the public sector in this? Is the public sector putting any funding behind it? How are the different operators participating in building this fiber network to every household to provide 1 gigabit per second to every household? And how developing countries, and in particular Moldova, could aspire to do something like this within the next decade? Thank you very much.
Okay, let me share a bit about our next generation broadband network. Our government, the Singapore government, did put in funds to start this next generation network. In fact, we are putting Singapore dollars 1 billion to create this network. Okay, we think that with the government funding to accelerate the build of this next generation network will be much better and faster. Now, we could actually let the incumbent, the existing operator, slowly take their time to change over, upgrade their copper network to the fiber network, but that will take very long. And it's the same thinking that we have when we do full market liberalization. The whole world is moving very fast. Korea, even China is looking at, in our region, they are looking into all high-speed network. So if we leave it to the current operator, they will take their time to change to this fiber network. So the government thinking was to put in the funding, the funding to start this whole network. And that's why we decided to pump in $1 billion into this project. Now, but when we pump in the money, we want to make sure that this network is an open access network. Otherwise, you will have the same problem as your incumbent, like Singtel, who get control of the whole network. And if Singtel builds its own fiber network, then it will restrict access for other operators to use the fiber network. So our condition to this project is we want to make sure that the government investment, once given, in exchange we have what we call open access to the fiber network. So what we did is we have a very intensive request for proposal. We invite the local telecom operator, the incumbent, they can combine with international consortium to bid for this project. And so the whole exercise was through open request of proposal that we invite international players to come and look into setting up this project. And through this open request of proposal, we then go about selecting who will lay this fiber network. And with this proposal, we actually specify all the requirements for open access. For example, whoever lay this fiber network, be it if it's awarded the incumbent or a new player, they must make sure that all their various components of the fiber network, the price is reviewed and regulated by IDA. It must be offered to everybody, non-discriminatorily, and other conditions also to make sure that, for example, this provider who lay the fiber network must be structurally separated. Like, for example, if it's awarded to a company that has where the incumbent has a stake in it, we must make sure that the incumbent do not have excessive control over the fiber network. So there are a lot of criteria governing open access and structural separation to make sure that if ever the project is awarded even to the incumbent do not have total control of the network. Now, it is a very complex project because it took us 2 years to come to this stage. I could have gone more detail, but then I think we'll it'll be another full day session to discuss about this. Yeah.
Thank you.
Еще раз спасибо, господин Тенг. У кого есть какие вопросы?
Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Who has other?
Quick question.
Yes.
People here say that implementing number portability is expensive and the benefits might not necessarily overweight the costs of implementing it. Can we, with your help, dispel this myth? How much did it cost Singapore to implement it? What were the benefits? And who supported the costs of implementing it? Thank you.
This is a typical complaint that operator will say whenever we impose number portability. They will say that there's a lot of changes to the back-end system. It costs millions of dollars to implement number portability. That is the usual reason. But I think when we work with our operator, we told them that they shouldn't be that short-sighted, because the reason they are reluctant to go into number portability is because they are afraid of losing their customer. Now, if they are more forward-looking, number portability not only allows you to attract more customers, and the more customers and if you provide good services, more customers will actually join your network. So your typical output will actually increase. Okay. Now, in Singapore, we also want to make sure that the number portability operator do not be controlled by any of the incumbent or operator. So what we have done is that we have provided an initial funding of $5 million Singapore dollars to make sure that it sets up an operator neutral company. But this is just to set up the operator neutral company that will not be affiliated to any of the telecom operator. However, all the back-end changes that the different telecom operator must do in order to support this number portability are not funded by the government. And some of our operators quoted that they have to spend 10 over million and things like that, but they still do it because they eventually know that with number portability, of course, they can lose customer, but they also can gain customer. The moment they gain customer, and if they have more what you call quarter pay services, actually the customer will stay, and that is a revenue stream that. So you need to be enlightened in terms of your how you tackle the problem. You will lose some, but you will also win some. And if you can win more, that is a good strategy to move forward. I hope that answers your question.
When you say they win more, it's a private gain, but the gain for the society, did anyone estimate that? Because the gain for the society is the decrease in tariffs, is the increase in consumption, number of minutes. So was that quantified somehow?
That was actually very hard to quantify because, first of all, for the consumer, the increase is also about convenience in able to switch to different operator. And the overall, for the consumer, they gained in terms of a very attractive mobile subscription plan. So if you look at it at a national level, all your consumer also will gain because there are more competition and the consumer actually will then use the services more because when operator compete, there are more attractive price plans for them to subscribe to mobile services, and once you have lower the price plan, people tend to use a mobile phone more also. So, but we don't have an exercise to quantify the cost benefit analysis on the consumer end because it's more a social benefit. There's no need to like, for example, to reprint a name card, to inform everybody if you change number. The number actually follow you for life if you switch operator. Right? So for our end, we didn't have a cost benefit analysis on the consumer end.
Thank you.
Я хотел бы всех поблагодарить
I
участников.
would like to thank all the participants to this interesting discussion. I would also like to thank our colleagues from Singapore. Mr. Kier, thank you very much for the professional answers. Take into consideration our great interest in this area. Maybe we should also, the agency should also, the regulator should also organize a round table because I understand that all the participants feel that they didn't have enough time to discuss everything that they wanted to. So thank you for participating, and now as far as I know we're having a coffee break.
Thank you. Sebastian?
Yes,
Sebastian?
I'm still around. Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yes. Hema has an emergency, so based on the presenter will be Jenny Wong.
Okay, sure.
Yeah,
can you just do me a favor? Can you just inform Lim and Jenny the same approach that you have taken, because I think it worked very well.
Okay, I will bring them. I'll go through.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay.
ascultă nimeni. Dar eu Inesa e ca și mă gândesc. Este că noi la un moment dat între doi oameni lucrăm. Și era un om în vârstă, pe minister. Și în vârstă, tânăr, din tineret. Și grăim engleză. Și știi ce mă gândesc? Конечно, финик верно слова, не без engleză. Dar это президент еврейской дело.
Dacă ne vorbim ceva mai așa, informativ, acolo iau un mesaj comparativ, dar vorbesc limba și de nu la întâlniri chiar vorbesc limba, el ar fi de a formula, de a gândi și spune ceva mișcat.
Asta cum Carolina ответила министру финансов Штраду. Ну тут nu mergem cu el, că mergem cu asta nu trebuie să și asta să nu zică, nu știu. Și Carolina îi sună. Și eu îi sun și zic, Carolina, el a grăit în el, tot și-o grăit normal, nu se dă tare, știi? Și ea, vă dau de îmi sună. Trei, ce să nu să vorbești engleză, eu nu trebuie să mă duc cu mele. Vorbești cu mele. Nu știu, nu știu. Eu cred că și fruiesc cu mele. Și aici...
Și face un mic șurit să ies la și cu și cu mine. Mereu să dai cu mine înaltă cu și Banca Mondială, nu știu. Dar asta fac și media ceva și apoi arată rău.
Dar crezi că când străini, totuși e confortabil. M-a dat eu în Giucuietiu. Ninge până vineri. Dar vineri n-a trecut.
M-am dus 30 minute 20 la sfârșitul tării.
Că nu poate la 9, că nu poate la 9. Eu asta. Asta sper. Да, как да, ieri o țară de ne răzăși și nouă și lături prafnic și strângem curțăm. Și azi dimineață, o grămadă de femei am văzut că colopete din nemță, nu și curțăm. Tatăl meu dimineață nu s-o liniștit și că la noi încă nu stroieni, că noi lucrate și nu stroieni, n-am și zice, dar tot pe bine. Mă țărnează dimineața și el ies dimineața. Da și nu știu de ce o afară. Eu nu vă țărnează, dar să dea de ei o să fac. E dușă, mulțumesc. Și amens a făcut fix pat șpașne. De ce ies dușă să spune că e rușinoasă. Și să spune, știi, deci. Fix pat șpaș, stătea așa, ea nu, eu la buzele așa, cic, să văd de așa, unii pus fundă.
Am văzut tot pe aia. Prima iarnă care văzut-o? Cu de pară? Eu fac să-i gândit așa. Ăștia care? Scorge?
Da, pune una și așa, alta.
Atunci stăta la curs și făcea așa, știi, și nu trebuie să-i doamne, așa de rafai să urmăresc urmă cum e reacționează, știi? Nu trebuie și iaptă, pe slab. Și gură cascaș, cu limba, să-ți vadă și...
Dar văzile așa zic carageu. Ele doar curoasă. Și așa zic carageu asta. Eu ieri am pățit-o cu mine, două jumătate, care eu, Doamne ferește, vrem mă apuca. Și așa eram happy, nu sunt tipuri. Și mă știi cum înainte de somnă, faci stai puțin, mă rog. Și la un moment dat să uite. Miau, miau, miau. Doamne, și s-a întâmplat, știi, dar papar bătaie. Mă uit noi, mă uit în casă și el stăm răzând, de cum coridor răzând, după către noi, te duci afară noi, dar ești să auzi parcă lângă mine. Am călmat starieță, un nivel și s-a blocat pe undeva sau a căzut ceva pe dăță, că rup ceva. Am călătat, m-am început pe distant să mă uit, am început, dar eu, nu știu cum vine, dar eu după sunet nu determin direcția, de unde vine sunetul. Eu în genere gândire în spațiu n-am, tare să mă uit în spațiu. Și stăteam așa pe lângă sări, știi, la fiecare cotinca. Eu am intrat în dulap. E dulap din papier, știi? Și eu am închis ușa, era închis ușa. Eu am intrat jos, în poziția așa de jos, dar eu nu văd că ea este acolo. Și eu am închis-o serios. Și țin închisă. Mie și nu-mi place când te pline. Și eu închis ușa și eu e lumină și că închis ușa s-a făcut întuneric și e speriat. Da, țăpa și nu găsim. Alo? Mă rog. Azi lucrez și mâine tot lucrez. Da. Nu știu, Nicoleta. De atâta poate că mănâncă fiecare zi. Asta e motiv. Ok. Da. Săptămâna viitoare, dacă vreți, internal. Da, în decembrie, sfârșitul decembrie. Anul trecut, mă zic, pe 20 decembrie a murit tăt. Da, nu este văzut. Da. Da, deci să ne întărești. Bine, hai, pa.
Hey, Sebastian.
We are having a short break. Should be.
No, I know.
Yeah.
No problem. I'm asking is because my presentation has some of the generic bits about Singapore. I don't know whether Ronnie has already covered those generic ones, Singapore Infocom statistics, the revenues last year, that kind of thing.
Actually, both of us have covered that on day one, so you can just run through it very fast.
Skip.
Because
I'll skip that.
Not really skip, because some of the participants here didn't come from yesterday, so some of them are different. So I think you can kind of blaze through it.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry again? Melanie is over here. Iklim. Iklim.
Yes, yes.
The lady beside you is Jenny, is it?
Jenny.
Jenny, because we don't have a bio, so when she starts the presentation, can you just ask her to give a short description, a very short one?
Because we only have famous bio.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
One
Okay.
sentence or one para is good.
Okay.
Saul Valerat Cristina.
Mulțumesc.
I would like to greet our colleagues from Singapore that joined us through video conference. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can. Hi.
Hi. Good morning.
Morning.
Da, bună dimineața. Deci, în conectare prin videoconferință avem pe Lo Ai Clim, director,
we also have Lo Ai Clim, Deputy Director of VGA International.
IDA, prost IDA. Avem o greșeală.
Or just IDA, not IDA International. And the second person is...
Hi, I'm Jenny Wong, Senior
friend?
Manager from Infocom Manpower, IDA.
Vă mulțumesc foarte mult pentru prezentare.
doamna.
Eu sunt doamna Școla, viceministru tehnologiei, informației și comunicații.
Deputy Minister for ICT.
Tema discuției care o
The
avem
subject
astăzi
of
este
today's discussion is the ICT industry and skills development, and in order not to waste any time, I think I will give you the floor for you to tell us about your experience, and then we'll have questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I will briefly, I think some of the points that I will touch may already be covered by my colleagues up in Moldova, either yesterday or earlier today. So some of it I'll skip very quickly, but by and large, really it's for me an opportunity to just share a little bit of what IDA has been doing in terms of growing a vibrant industry here in Singapore. And industry, I mean obviously the IT suppliers, the vendors. Okay, maybe quickly to slide 2. So this is what I will cover. Very quickly, as I understand, like I said, some of this Infocom landscape basic information about Singapore has already been covered, so I'll do that quickly for those who have missed maybe to yesterday's session. I will dive in to talk about some of the key strategies that IDA undertake for industry development, then zoom back on the framework that guide our industry development. Would that be okay? Okay, very quickly, slide 4. I think this is really the basic slide, and this is something that we show obviously for many of our companies or MNC partners, you know, when they are considering what sort of investments they want to put into Singapore. So I think you're familiar already, Singapore is obviously a small country. The key things that maybe to take away is that there is a low turnover in terms of employment. Yeah, we are also mindful in stressing the point that we've got a high literacy rate of 95.7%, and that this population it's quite a diverse one because we are a multiracial population, and therefore for many of our MNC partners, many of our industry players, right, the fact that you can pilot and test out solutions, ICT solutions, and take advantage of the fact that we are multiracial, whether using that and then addressing the China market or addressing the Indian market, is something that we often showcase. All right, so moving on, slide 5, again the basic IT stats. The home broadband penetration, we are reaching 100% adoption, is something that we had chosen as a target when we were developing our master plan, the latest of which is called Intelligent Nation 2015. Business adoption is something that we're pushing obviously very hard on, and then of course in terms of the mobility portion is that many of our businesses and consumers are very familiar with using the mobile phones for their applications. Any point in time where you want to ask questions, please feel free to interject asked me. Snapshot of our IT industry in Singapore. So the data and the graphs that are shown in slide 6. So in terms of the percentage of our IT industry, we have grown relative to other industries. So from the year 2003 up to 2008, you can see that the percentage of ICT contribution to the GDP has grown. And in terms of the CAGR, it's a high double-digit growth that we have been growing at, right? Given that we are a small country, what we're seeing is that exports obviously have comprised a bigger and bigger percentage of this ICT revenue generation, right? And in fact, exports are experiencing a growth rate of 15.4 year-on-year growth. So here is a case where we know that both the local ICT companies and even our MNC partners are selling their solutions, their software, their services out of Singapore, and that has contributed to the growth of this industry. Slide 7, a composite whole of what are the portions of the ICT industry that contributes to the overall revenue. Hardware continues to be giving more than half of the overall ICT revenue, and where we are seeing growth in terms of strongest growth is in the software and services area. Manpower pool is obviously key to our industry. So again, taking a snapshot of a year, a decade kind of growth, we're seeing that at this point, at least last year, in terms of our data, we've got about nearly 140,000 ICT manpower. I think about 43% of them comes from the user environment, so they're working in the banks or healthcare and IT divisions, and then about 57% of them are working in the supplier environment, so they are working in the HPs and the Microsofts. Again, the manpower portion, later my colleague Jenny would probably elaborate more. Again, I think this is both my colleague Ronnie and Sebastian may have also highlighted this. I think this slide really just put in place that in terms of adoption, in terms of the competitiveness of our IT industry, and in particular our e-government rankings, I think Singapore has been favorably placed, right? In terms of our usage of ICT and in terms of how our ICT, both users as well as suppliers, are innovating and making sure that ICT is an important contributor to our economy. Okay, very quickly, just before I go into the industry development strategies, obviously underlying and underpinning the industry development strategies, we have all the overarching master plans, and you would know by now that Singapore it's been master planned to exact details since IT was identified as an engine of growth. So when 1980, when we started the National Computerization Plan, and then the birth of the predecessor of IDA, the National Computer Board, we have had one master plan for IT after another, and then sitting alongside specific one for government. Okay, so as we move up the value chain of getting people to be familiar with IT, then how can we enable the private sector to increase their productivity and effectiveness and competitiveness using IT, is Singapore itself. How can we grow an engine with our industry to propel our industry forward? IDA's role. So the one that I'm talking about, again, I think some bits of this maybe Sebastian and Ronnie already have covered. We have 4 main functions. The one that I want to talk about this afternoon is obviously relating to how IDA develops a vibrant and competitive IT and communications industry. So what do we do in terms of who are the players that we engage with within IDA? we obviously work with, on one end, on the left-hand side, all of the suppliers. And this will comprise the multinationals, the big boys, that put Singapore as their regional or even global hubs for some of the activities, whether procurement, whether it's sales, whether it's business development, whether it's their CIO functions. Then there is the local, Infocom local enterprises. That's our term. So the Infocom local enterprises, the SMEs, as well as the bigger Singapore IT companies. And this is who we deal with. And then, of course, the pipeline of young startups, both foreign and local, that we bring into Singapore. Now, how do we nurture them so that we can grow the future stars of our IT industry? On the other side, on the right-hand side, it's the users. Government, obviously, in the case of Singapore, the biggest ICT spenders are government, the public sector. So every year, IDA, for example, will do a big industry briefing, whereby we will tell the industry, these are the procurement plans, these are the plans we have in terms of IT spending, what kind of systems that we're going to do. It's a way to indicate to industry that, look out for this, more importantly, work with us in doing this innovation. And of course, there's a whole big chunk of multinationals. Singapore has about 7,000, close to 8,000 MNCs that have placed their regional responsibility or global responsibilities in Singapore. Many of them are users. They're not ICT vendors. They are the Procter & Gamble, your Mobile Exxon, your Shell. All these people are also users of IT. Now, how do we work with them to obviously create opportunities for IT vendors or IT industries? Then there's a whole pool of small and medium enterprises that we believe can use IT to make themselves more competitive. And then, of course, the end consumers. And then sitting in the middle is the IDA Industry Development Group. And you will find that we have focused on several things, and it's all clear. There's obviously a group looking at enterprise Infocom. These are largely suppliers that addresses enterprise. So we have some areas where we identify where we are focusing attention on e-government, mobility, security, shared services, and the emerging technologies. We have groups addressing consumers. That means working with Infocom companies that really addresses the needs of consumers. And this has to do with a lot of the digital media, the gaming companies, the virtual world companies, and social networks. And underpinning this, we obviously need to develop the manpower part. We need to attract and cultivate an environment for entrepreneurship so that startups continue to flourish. There's a big pool of SMEs that we think can be transformed with many of these players. And then, as I mentioned before, because export is the one that shows the greatest growth, efforts to internationalize many of the solutions that are in place in Singapore. Slide 14. In terms of our industry development objectives, we categorize under 4 broad categories. So the work of IDA industry development must in some way factor in this consideration. First one, obviously anchoring, the anchoring function, attracting multinationals to do more innovations in Singapore, attracting startups emerging from whether in the US or Europe or our neighboring countries to add diversity to our Infocom ecosystem. So this is the anchoring function, that means the attraction bit. Second, the growing part. How do we grow competitive capabilities for our IT industry in Singapore? So whether it is product development grants, innovation grants, whether it is capability development or technology roadmap mapping for our IT industry. This is the growing part. Connecting, because like I mentioned in the earlier slide, we've got a whole diversity of many players. There are the RIs, there are obviously users, there are startups, there are multinationals. All of them play various roles in our IT ecosystem in Singapore one charter in terms of industry development is to make sure we are connecting the dots so that we can yield the greatest benefit for IT industry by pairing or connecting various players and forging partnership and alliances within this ecosystem. So this connecting part is important. So when we bring, for example, HP into Singapore, we are saying that we have a partnership program to tie up with local industries players, local players, local IT vendors, as well as startups, so that we can ride on obviously some of these technology capabilities that, say, Microsoft brings into Singapore, so that there is a spin-off effect to our local industry. Take, for example, also there are things that we do with multinationals, whereby we work with them so that they will take on some of this manpower capability thing. So they will say, I will sponsor IT scholarships, so that we will fund people to go either overseas universities to study specific areas in IT, or in Singapore, we got 3 big universities that exist. We've got a 4th one coming. There are programs that will increase that capabilities. The other way is, of course, when we tie up with some of our multinationals, we also pair them up with our research institute, so that there is that spin-off and overall beneficial effect. Lastly, and this is something that in terms of what Singapore does, is obviously we want to see IT solutions that are made in Singapore, whether it's by a multinational, whether it's by a local enterprise, to obviously take advantage of the global markets. So in terms of work that we do, leveraging on our colleagues from IDA International, as well as our own IDA offices overseas, as well as resting with some of our Singapore government agencies, such as International Enterprise Singapore, that helps Singapore firms go out to tap overseas demand. This is something that, again, we work closely for them to bring our IT players out to the other parts of the world. I have briefly described just now, really the broad strokes, what we do: anchor, grow, connect, and globalize. And this, in terms of the following slides, is some of the examples of what I mean. Of what does it mean to anchor, what does it mean to grow, what does it mean to connect and globalize. So some of the highlights and some of the logos here are efforts that IDA have undertaken in the last 3 years, since the launch of our master plan, Intelligent Nation 2015, launched in 2005. So in terms of anchoring and creating innovation diversity, so for example, we have worked with IT MNCs to set up innovation centers in emerging as well as strategic technology areas in Singapore. So the partners that have done this, for example, with Cisco, we've set up an enabling platform innovation center that take advantage of the fact that we now have a 1 gig network. So where we work with Cisco is that, given that we have got this next generation broadband network, we want to see the growth of innovative retail service providers in Singapore. So Cisco obviously has a technology prowess. So one of the things that they're saying is that here we will set up the first in the world. We have not done this anywhere else. We will commit to working with your local industry players to groom certain number of retail service providers, and then we will bring capabilities into Singapore. So that's one example. With HP, it's on cloud computing. With Oracle, again, new capabilities that they will bring into Singapore. So these are seeding innovation center in Singapore with technology leaders. With user MNCs, we are attracting global CIO functions into Singapore. So those examples, these are mainly, obviously, not IT companies. Citibank, BNP Paribas, Deutsche Bank, Daimler, is that we're saying we have an ecosystem, our infrastructure, our obviously business climate, our ecosystem of IT players that you can take advantage of. So BNP Paribas, for example, set up their global IT functions, their CIO functions in Singapore, as a way to take advantage of all those elements that I've referred to in Singapore. City is the same. We're talking about the next generation and solutions for the banking, Daimler, Deutsche Bank. So some of this CRO functions, development center function, operations center functions is where we have said we have an infrastructure, we have the players, we have the manpower to be able to take to take advantage of all these elements. In terms of the startups and growth companies, we have in the last 24 months, in the last 2 years, been going out to foreign startups in the US, in Israel, even in Europe, to try to draw some of these more innovative startups to set up engineering centers in Singapore. Again, it is a case of adding diversity to our ecosystem. Emerging digital media companies too have been hosting out of Singapore some of these gaming companies. So again, this is some of the flavor of what we mean by anchoring. So it's not just the big players. We are also interested in attracting some of the innovative startups. In the next 5 years, hopefully they are going to be the next HP, the next Cisco. In terms of growth, so again, few areas in terms of growing capabilities of our IT companies. We have a program to support creation of intellectual property via our capability development program. So IDA supports in terms of some grants, government grants, to incentivize or make it easier, help lower the risk for IT companies to do some of this IP creation in Singapore, right? And then there's obviously a whole level of skill set as well that we attach to training some of the CXOs, CEO, CTO, that in terms of business development skills, in terms of growth, in terms of financing. So again, workshops that we put together with various industry partners to help raise the capability of our local enterprises. In terms of user SMEs, we also have programs to help them overcome some of them resistance, right, or fear of technology, right, of using IT. I don't understand, I don't appreciate the benefits that IT can bring. So again, we have a grant, we have a government support programs to help them overcome some of these fears, to take the first step, for example, creating the first web presence, in terms of understanding what you can do with IT to enhance your competitiveness. So this transformative work is something that we do to grow competitive capabilities. And then in the area of digital media, because it's an emerging area, we set up accelerator projects, we set up game resource centers. Again, bit is to train our local industry players, riding on the shoulders of some of these big multinationals such as Sony to do this. The Infocom professionals and the talent bit, again, just briefly, I flash it out to you, but my colleague later, Jenny, will elaborate more, so maybe I'll skip that at this point in time and let her maybe advise later in her presentation some of this manpower training capability building kind of programs that we run here in Singapore. Slide 18, in terms of connect. So, like I said, while we bring all these multiple players, we don't want to treat them as silos, right? Because in and of themselves, they may not be able to reap the benefit of working together. And in the environment that we operate today, in IT, where we talk about crowdsourcing, where we talk about Web 2.0, we talk about open collaboration, open source collaboration. Obviously, the intent is to mix and match local industry with multinationals, with our research institutes, with our Institute of Higher Learnings, right? So partnership programs that we do with our MNCs, we have 2 partnership programs. So if you look at what is on the slide, there's a program called Infocom Local Industry Upgrading Program, in short, ILU. We also run an Overseas Development Program, ODP. These are largely with the big players. So whether it's HP, Microsoft, Oracle, Cisco, Singapore Telecoms, we run a program whereby we fund some of these big companies to develop some of our local players. So the independent software vendors that we have locally in Singapore. So they will help train some of our local players in terms of technology. They will create jointly with our local players intellectual properties. They will go to market because they obviously have big marketing channels. They are obviously also global companies that have access to various markets, at least in Asia. So we work with these multinationals or with the Singapore telecoms or the bigger local companies, pairing them with, say, 5 to 10 smaller local SMEs, go to market whereby the MNCs basically working with IDA will promise that I will deliver X dollar of revenue for your local enterprises. So this is a partnership program that we've been running for some years now, and it's proved effective. It's a win-win situation because the multinational gain by having some of these niche solutions provided by our local players. For our local players, they ride on the shoulder of the big multinational with the channels, with the technology, and obviously with the capabilities. Right? Then also we work with our multinational partners to set up these next generation innovation centers. The key word here is next generation. So we want to know what's coming, not current generation, not what is available, but seed future generation. And where we work with the multinationals, you must carry the responsibility of partnering X number of local enterprises. So that's one mechanism by which we forge this partnership and alliances. Then in terms of some of the, for example, in the communication space, we find that a lot of local small players, developers, have difficulty because whether access to handset manufacturers, whether access to the telcos. And again, we forge. And so we have two programs running with Singapore Telecoms. The intent here is to make lower the barrier for many of our small developers and mobile enterprises to ride on what Singtel can provide, what BlackBerry, what Nokia, what Apple, what Palm can provide, right? So since 2006, we have launched a portal whereby we're showcasing a lot of our local enterprises, for example. The Infocom Singapore portal is now about more than 500 members, whereby we showcase the capabilities of our local enterprises. We match opportunities whereby people post their requirements that they're looking to tender, or this is some of the things that I'm looking to buy from Singapore. And then included in them are SME and game resource. So this is an effort that we do with our industry, the Singapore IT Federation, since 2006. In terms of our digital media, we have brought together an industry roundtable whereby we have got both the content providers as well as technology providers sitting together with our local players to forge these partnerships. Slide 19. Slide 19 really is the effort that IDA has been undertaking in terms of spreading our external wings, right, to various parts of the world whereby solutions provided by our Singapore providers, by Singapore enterprises, right, it's in demand. So for example, we know that our overseas center, our partnership with MNC, were generated X dollars of export revenue. In China, in ASEAN, we use different mechanisms. There is business councils that have been formed, there are G2G MOUs that have been forged. Then again, in terms of expanding our work on e-government, you know, IDA International was formed earlier this year, and then together with IDA International and International Enterprise Singapore, we set up a global business development center of excellence, right? So solution center in China that's been done. So I think that just in brief, these are all the efforts to help our local enterprises go out to market. Any questions at this point? Okay, if not, can I quickly go to slide 21? I think I've already alluded to this in my earlier slides. In the end, we want to grow a vibrant industry because they will form the core engine of our intent for a knowledge-based economy. So this sector obviously as you can tell from the growth year on year, and in order for that growth, our IT industry must grow. So that is really the underlying motivation. And in terms of why we want to grow, in terms of helping our IT industry, obviously, one is growing this comprehensive ecosystem. The other key pivotal point is the need to innovate. So whether it's borrowing from or wanting MNC to bring that to Singapore or incentivizing our local startups to innovate, that's a key pillar. Then some capability development. We look at both enterprise development, so whether it's grants or support programs to help them to innovate, as well as our manpower development, so that we have highly skilled people that are entering the industry. Underpinning this, obviously, it's all the, you would say, the hygiene factors that we need to build. Policies and regulation that is conducive for this growth. We do need to work with our users because they are the demand generators. Then there's grants and incentives that government put in place to help lower the risk for our local enterprises or bring that capability into Singapore. And then obviously we must have indicators to measure whether how are we tracking in terms of growing this industry. Right? Slide 22. Slide 22, if you would quickly take a look at what we have put there, it's obviously in terms of the ecosystem, the different layers that we need to bring into place. Underlying this, of course, the telecom infrastructure, and you would have heard that we are investing Singapore dollar $1 billion to build the next generation broadband network. And again, this is key because it's one way to join some of this telecom infrastructure players into Singapore. So you will find that BT, Cable and Wireless, Deutsche Telekom, are big players in this space in Singapore. So that undergirds many of the things that we want to draw in. Then at the second tier, obviously attracting the middleware and the OS players. So your Sun and Oracles exist in that space. Then the application and the internet service providers. Again, the names that you find populating in this slide, many of them have got Singapore certainly as a regional headquarters. They already cited their regional headquarters for Asia Pacific out of Singapore. And in many cases, whether it's Microsoft or IBM, some of their functions are global headquarter functions in Singapore, right? IT service providers and the shared IT services part. So the shared IT services part is some of the demand generators because these are users that come to Singapore, they have IT demand, they have IT investments, and they are looking to work with some of these IT players that you will find in all the various rounds. In terms of market development, in terms of initiatives, so IDA is really acting as a catalyst in linking the research institutes, the Institute of Higher Learning, to work with multinationals that are looking to work on R&D activities in Singapore. And then we match obviously some of this MNC work with our local enterprises. We look to the users who are the demand generators. One is obviously the public sector, because they are all looking to sell into government. Now, how do we use that as one mechanism to draw in some of this innovation investments into Singapore? And then, of course, working with our groups within IDA that work with users to transform the sectors, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it is tourism. So they are users that will consume some of these IT services. So in terms of initiative for IT, for example, working with a research institute, we've got many of these IT specialist institutes that have been formed since the 1980s. Slide 24, Sebastian, yeah? Okay, that have been formed. So they continue to devote resources in terms of working at creation of IP. So whether it's looking at areas of security, mobility. So we got a big setup here, and in some areas like security, many of our one of our research institutes, the Institute of Communications, they would say that they are in terms of patents filed, they are among the leading institutes in the world. In terms of working with multinationals, again, like I said, we've got iLoop, I mentioned this before, and collaboration with many multinationals in terms of big, broad stroke cluster projects, right? We also work with multinationals in terms of whenever there are big CEOs come into town, we will give them a platform, the Distinguished Infocom Speaker or Infocom Live, for them to reach out to the community here in Singapore, both the IT industry as well as the user industry, to hear what is coming up next in terms of their technology roadmap. Okay, local enterprises, I mentioned, we use them in terms of benefit them through some of our partnership programs in terms of the Infocom Singapore branding or internationalization program. Finally, the users, if you turn to slide 24, you will find that there are several cluster-wide projects that have been launched in Singapore since the 80s. So TradeNet, 1989, really has been the launch pad for some of our IT vendors to use that IP that they've created for these systems for our trading community to sell this to other countries. So LawNet, so the whole list of projects that I think IDA or NCB before us have launched in terms of providing a platform for users to consume and for IT vendors to take advantage of their opportunity. Okay. Can we turn to slide 25? Slide 25. So again, the mapping in terms of how we grow the capabilities of our companies. You will see that at various stages, right? When you start, so in terms of the life of a company in Singapore, from the startup to the productization to the grow partnership to then globalize, we have different programs that meet the needs of these players, whether it's working capital. So there are programs to give seed funding, for example, for startups, to at least be able to productize, to try out a prototype of an idea that they have. Technology transfer with our research institutes. Then when they are looking at productization, there are grants that help them. There are best practices that we tie them up with. There are MNC multinationals that we pair them up with to go to market, to create this IP. Then in terms of growth, both locally as well as forging partnerships, again, whether it's working the MNC distribution channels, test bedding it in Singapore because of sites both from the public sector as well as user sector. And then when we go to internationalization, marketing them, giving them the Infocom Singapore branding, our overseas center bridging them to customers, forging alliances riding on the back of MNCs. So these are some again of the underlying programs that we run to feed the need of our local enterprises in terms of growing their capability. The manpower part, I'll skip very quickly because Jenny will refer to them, in time. Policies and regulations. So like I say, policy and regulation, I think the key thing, and I think Serping also has referred to them just now in the earlier briefing, really in the end to make sure that we have a pro-business environment that is conducive for our multinational players, whether it's telecoms, infrastructure players, whether it's the middleware layer, whether it's service providers, that they will find it easy to operate in Singapore. Right? In terms of demand generation, we will work with other economic sectors. This is slide 29. Slide 29. In terms of demand creation, working with our other economic sectors, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, whether it's trade and logistics, to consider whether there could be call for collaborations for future services, future technologies that can be deployed in Singapore. So I'll give you an example. We do many calls for collaboration as a tool to encourage our industry to suggest solutions that can be implemented in certain verticals. So this is the work that IDA does. IDA will go talk to some of these economic sector owners. So for example, in education, we'll talk to the Ministry of Education. We want to test out certain next generation services that are meant to enhance learning for our students, that will enhance the teaching by our teachers, to enhance really learning all around, right? And so we will work with the users, in this case the Ministry of Education, to scope out what are possible. They identify some schools that can be test beds for this next generation services, you know, and we will then do a call for collaboration, scoping out what are the requirements that we want. Let's say we have 5 schools. In the case of future schools, there were 5 schools that we've identified to be ready test beds for this next generation education technologies. We call the industry. We want formation of consortiums. So we want MNCs, we want local enterprises, we want startups to form consortiums to deliver these solutions to the schools. So this is one case where we build a demand, right? Whereby industry vendors will then come and say, you know, we're going to do this and do this only for Singapore in the school environment. So I think that's one of the things that we do in IDA to create this demand and development of innovative solutions. Slide 30. So again, to lower the risk for many of our ICT industry to develop this innovation, IDA has got schemes to catalyze the development of these products and services. One set is for local industry, for them to try out, for them to develop. So there are many schemes actually that we, together with our government, other government agencies, incentivize SMEs, incentivize startups. And then there are also program of incentive for MNCs, for them to want to be willing to invest in the next generation innovation lab that they want to set up in Singapore. So we lower some of that risk by providing a grant that they will be willing to say, we will seed this in Singapore and we will commit to working with our local industry. So there are partnership programs between MNC and local enterprises where again we fund the MNCs to do that for our local enterprises. There are schemes to encourage adoption of IT by SMEs. Again, they are demand generators. And then the attraction of the startup activity, right? Whether it's promising startups to set up engineering centers in Singapore, there's a scheme to attract that, or even incubation centers. That means these are people who are the guardians of attracting startups. We want them in Singapore as well. Again, there are specific schemes to address incubation centers. Even to mentors, that means to people who are serial entrepreneurs, who have started business one after another. There are schemes specific for that, for these individuals who have the know-how to do startup and who can impart knowledge to our ecosystem here in Singapore. We have a scheme to draw them into Singapore so that they spend a certain amount of time in Singapore to just pass on some of the experiences. Lastly, in slide 31, right, so IDA obviously needs to keep track of the fact that whether the programs are effective, and that's something that we continuously refresh to make ourselves relevant and meaningful to working with the industry. So IDA does an annual survey in terms of sensing the pulse. And this annual survey, well, it captures all the data in terms of revenue growth, in terms of the new areas that are developing, right? More importantly, within the industry development group, every quarter we are working with our industry to seek in finding out what are the new areas of concerns that our industry is facing. What are the, for example, in the last 12 months, obviously the impact of the financial crisis. How has that impacted investments? How has that impacted recruitment? How has that impacted your new areas of technology development? So that's something that we keep close pulse of with our own Infocom industry, right? So in terms of industry measurements, really it's manpower. Is that been growing? In terms of innovation and entrepreneurship, are there a lot of startups that are registering their business in Singapore? Are there a lot of filing of IPs in Singapore? In terms of industry size, obviously, what is the percentage of the ICT industry to the GDP, right? What is the growth rate in terms of the ICT industry, right? In terms of ICT costs, because again, in some of our work, we are competing, and it's a competitive game. We are competing with our neighboring countries. China is obviously a competitor in terms of attracting multinational work, India too. So in terms of the cost of operating in Singapore, so the ICT infrastructure, the cost of phone calls, lease line, internet, hosting, data center charges. So that's something that we continuously refine our strategy, working with our Economic Development Board colleagues to get this out. So that Singapore continues to be an attractive hub for many of our multinationals, continues to be an attractive place for many of our local industry to develop innovations, as well as, importantly, continues to be a magnet for some of these innovative startups, both local to start in Singapore, as well as drawing the foreign startups. That's the end of my presentation. Maybe at this point, if there are questions to what has been presented to you, I'll be happy to try to clarify some of the things I've shared.
Thank you. It's a very interesting presentation, and it's again show us how systemic your approach is, and the set of measurements you presented show us the deep understanding of the value chain of the industry and the needs of the industry, and the extremely important is the interest to develop the industry in the country and to support the local entrepreneurs and local initiatives. Thank you very much again. And now, please, we have here in the room there are quite impressive numbers of participants representing government and private companies, administrations involved in ICT sector, and I would like all of my colleagues to address questions.
Thank you very much. My name is Anna Kirița. I'm the Executive Director of the ICT Association from Moldova, and at the same time the ICT Advisor at the USAID-funded project SEED, which means Competitiveness Enhancement and Enterprise Development. And I have a question. I agree with Donna about the consistency and the good, let's say, template or design of what you have shown, which we probably lack. But I have a question, maybe not very good one. Do you have any measurements of, or do you have it at all, as in terms of gray sector or black market sector? Do you have any of this?
No,
Everything is just nice, fine, good. Do you have any of this? So this is my question.
Of the gray sector.
Gray or black market sector in ICT industry?
No.
Okay. It doesn't matter. That's my question, you know. But that's a good.
Not that we're aware of, anyway.
Okay, let's have more questions to the subject.
I mean, just as a reference, since the lady who was asking the question comes from the IT Association. IDA works very closely with the Singapore IT Federation. So you will find that many of the initiatives, whether it's Infocom Singapore branding, whether it is some of the go-to-market initiatives we run, we use the SITF, the Singapore IT Federation, as a sounding board, as a way to engage industry. So let's say we have got a program that we're trying to run next year. We're thinking of that this is a need that we have identified. We think it will be useful as a way to develop industry. We will go to SITF. We will share with them some of these thoughts or ideas to receive the feedback. Because SITF comprises all the vendors. both the multinationals as well as local SMEs. So they provide a good sounding board for some of the initiatives we want to launch. So even IDA International, for example, it was birthed after a long consultation with the Singapore IT Federation. So I think I just want to highlight that that's the close link between government and IT industry.
Thank you very much for this comment. Actually, I would like to mention that in the last period, with the changes we have had at the governmental level, there have been initiatives, and we really welcome that, from the Ministry of Information and Technology and Communication, about having a partner as the IT Association. At least there is a dialogue started, but we still do not have this design as you have. If you ask us about I can give you some numbers in terms of measurements. Let's say that the ICT sector also represents about 9.5% of the GDP of Moldova, which is different from the Singapore, but still we do have some numbers. Though we do not have a clear concept on all the things that happen here. Let's say in terms of education, in terms of ICT industry development, we understand this has to happen, and with the support of the international projects such as, for example, SEED, there have been a lot of initiatives started in terms of, for example, developing the Cisco network, and in terms of education, let's say, like one thing. There are initiatives going on, but we still do not have such a good outline of the ICT sector, ICT importance, ICT penetration in terms of all the economical fields, let's say, at a national level. So basically, these are some of the problems maybe that we face, but there is a dialogue started, and we truly believe that with the support of the ministry and the government, with the support of the international donors, things will start moving on. For example, again, referring to the SEED project, there are some ideas and support in terms of defining the policy-wide book of the ICT sector, which I have in front of me. There are some ideas of helping to define a national action plan in terms of ICT development. There are some ideas of opening a company excellence center in Moldova. But still, we are still at the beginning, and we cannot design, as you have designed, such a very nice presentation at this moment.
I think to be fair, obviously for us, it was really part of the growth, right? Because when we started this, it was focusing on really the government sector first, and then the user sector. So whether it's the legal industry, whether it was the trade industry, whereby we were running some of these IT projects. It was only towards maybe the end of towards the middle of 1990s, whereby we say, okay, now that we've created all these programs after 10 over years, right? There's a lot of activities in terms of some of our MNCs that are operating out of Singapore. Now, what can we do in terms of encouraging more innovations for them to plant it in Singapore? And then we've got, as a result of all these projects that were being run, these big cluster projects, TradeNet, LawNet, and all, we're finding a growth of local enterprises that have taken advantage. Now, what do we need to grow their capabilities as well? So it was only towards 10 years into the history of our journey towards IT that we said, hey, we need to have a charter to drive industry development as well. We need to see how to grow a vibrant industry capability so that the local company can continue to innovate, and then for the MNCs, that they will continue to do many activities in Singapore. So I think it's a journey, as you say, you are at the start or whichever point, but for us to be where we are, it took many years of learning as well.
Thank you. I think that the lack of questions, do we have some, by the way? The lack of questions is explained by the fact that our government and the industry are not so mature and are not mature enough to understand and to start working together and to understand the importance of the government support to develop the competitiveness of the sector and to develop the sector. I think that your presentations and the possibility to learn out of your experience is coming at the very right moment to Moldova and my colleagues in the government, and I really hope that we'll be able to build some of our initiatives based on this experience, and might be even based on our future cooperation and collaboration, because it would be really good to use some of your ideas and of your experience, and to avoid some of the mistakes you probably had along years in implementing these things. Thank you very much again, and I really hope that we will be able to understand. Now we are, as yesterday from the very first presentations, we are all shocked. It's just much more higher than we can imagine even. So I really hope that we will be able to digest all of this information and to be able to develop an action plan, keeping in mind the needs and the opportunities and the possibilities to achieve the results. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'll ask my colleague for manpower part, because I think it just nicely flows, if it's okay.
Yes, thanks. Hello, hi, good morning. Okay, I will be covering on the Infocom manpower strategies in Singapore. I will structure my presentation in two parts. If you could help me bring it to slide number 2. The first part, actually, I will be focusing more on an overview and how the Infocom manpower strategies fit into the in 2015 master plan. And the second part, I will then dive down into greater details on the various strategies within the manpower development itself. Okay, moving on to slide 4. Basically, there are 4 strategic thrusts in the the Intelligent Nation 2015 Master Plan. On the top, at the top of it is actually the sectorial transformation. My colleague Iklim actually mentioned a little bit on that just now, earlier. I'll cover that as well. At the bottom left is actually on the Infocom infrastructure. Infrastructure is also a key element in our strategic master plan. And in the middle is actually about grooming the globally competitive Infocom industry. And of course, the 4th thrust is actually on the Infocom manpower. All right. Let me just move on very quickly to the thrust number 1, which is on slide number 5. It is about setting Infocom infrastructure. As some of my colleagues have probably covered, one of the key areas of development is actually really looking at the whole infrastructure, and one of which is the next generation broadband, where basically it's about bringing broadband accessibility to the schools, to the homes, and of course to the businesses. Another infrastructure that was recently rolled out is also the wireless at SG, which is about wireless access across the nation at key points, where basically it provides access to the community. So these are some of the infrastructure that have been put in place to basically facilitate the use of Infocom by consumers as well as businesses. So that is thrust number 1. Thrust number 2 in our Infocom, in our master plan is actually on the Infocom manpower bit. On slide number 6, you would actually see an overview of the Infocom manpower strategy. If you would look at the objective, the main objective is about building high-quality Infocom professionals to meet the needs of our industry. And in terms of the outcome, we are looking at really two sides of it. One is the student side, so we are not just focusing on the professionals, but our strategies have actually grown from a very broad-based building capabilities on a general level at the professional side to a broad spectrum ranging all the way from a student looking at the needs of attracting talent from a very young age and building their capabilities and interests all the way to professionals, senior professionals. So the entire spectrum, from the left-hand side, we have the talent seeding in schools, really about how do we bring on board top talent, attracting top talents to join the Infocom professional, anticipating the future needs of our industry as our industry grow over the years. And next to that, actually, we have the talent attraction to Infocom. After we've actually attracted them to have an interest in Infocom, how do we actually engage them? And some of the programs that we have are things like scholarship, where we get them one step into the industry. And next, what we have done is once we have actually groomed the students, we will look at really developing the professionals and some of the training programs that we have put in place to encourage upgrading within the industry. I will be covering the details of these programs later in my presentation in part 2. And slide number 7, basically I wanted to also share with you the growth of the industry over the years. I think Eklim has earlier shared with you how our revenue has grown and how actually the domestic revenue has also grown quite substantially. Some of the, I think, key contribution of the domestic revenue actually came from voice communication as well as IT services. All right, I won't cover on that since my colleague has covered it earlier. If you could go with me to slide number 8. This actually gives you a broad profile of the Infocom manpower that we've hired. As you can see, the manpower that we hire, many of them are graduates, are university or polytechnic graduates. The ones in red are actually the university grads, the blues are the diploma, and of course the green colored bar is actually the A-level students, right? So as you can see, a big bulk of our manpower are actually on the higher range of, in terms of the needs, higher valued jobs. So we hire a lot on the graduates and diploma graduates, which is why we need to focus a lot on attracting the top talents into the industry. Next, on slide number 9 is actually on the manpower job situation in Singapore, and this has also been covered earlier. And I think the key point is that each year we have actually not just grown, but there is still vacancies. The bar in red are actually the vacancies that we have within our industry, and the vacancies currently are mainly in the area of software development, infrastructure support, as well as sales and marketing. Okay, on slide number 10, this table basically gives you spread of the manpower employment in the different sectors. My colleague has mentioned also that about 50% of our professionals are hired in the Infocom sector, meaning by the Microsoft, the Oracles, the Cisco, and of course our local players. And the other 40%, close to 50%, are hired by the user industries. And this basically gives you a spread of the different user sectors that are hiring the Infocom professionals into their companies. So this also illustrates the need on Singapore's manpower needs, that we are looking very much at what we call hybrid Infocom professionals, meaning that they would need to come to the industry equipped with not just manpower understanding, but also an understanding of the various business domains, be it in the banking, finance, or in the education sector, to understand the workflow, the business needs of the various sectors. And we see, and this need has also, as I will share with you later, translated into some of our strategies as we plan for our next generation professionals. All right, so this is key as we move on to the next, I think the next few years in the future, how we groom our professionals. Next, I will move on to slide number 11, which is the thrust 3 of our master plan. This is really about building, transforming the various economic sectors in Singapore, be it government-run sectors or even the more private sectors. Some of the sectors which we have been working on transforming are things like the transport sector. I think there was also a news recently on our transport sectors partnering with Google for the Google View. And we also have the financial sectors, which is also a key employer of the professionals that we have here, Infocom professionals here. The tourism sector, the digital media sector, which is also growing, is one of our strategic sectors that we're growing in Singapore. The government sector, which is again a key sector in driving demand, and in many of the areas, it is the government sectors that is sort of leading in terms of using of Infocom within the industry. Of course, the manufacturing, the logistics, the SMEs, and the education sectors. So IDA actually partners with many of these key players in each of these sectors to develop projects. Some of them are pilot projects, some are wide-scale national projects, like what ICLIM has shared, the LawNet project, the TradeNet project. These are massive projects that brings on the entire sector and to embrace the use of Infocom. And this is one of the key driver in bringing Infocom to the businesses. And because of this, I think that has also translated into a change in terms of our needs for the type of business of Infocom professionals that we would need currently as well as in the future. Next, I would go to slide number 12. And the fourth thrust in our master plan is actually about developing the Infocom industry, which ICLIM has actually elaborated quite a bit, so I will not go into that. So as an overview, these are the key strategies, the key thrusts that we have to drive the Infocom demand as well as the supply of professional, of talent, and how the manpower piece fits into the national strategy. The next part of my presentation, I will go deeper into each of the manpower strategies. On the slide 15, I will start off with talent attraction to Infocom. Next slide. Talent attraction, as I mentioned earlier, is about building the interest, exciting the students, and drawing top talent into the industry. I think one of the challenges that we feel that we have in Singapore is really about getting the cream of the crop talent to join the infocom industry. I think this is a challenge not just faced by Singapore, but by many of the other countries where, you know, infocom and engineering, things like that, these disciplines are not as maybe sexy as some of the other domains. So we have that challenge as well in Singapore, and we have actually put in place some of these initiatives to draw talent from the youth. The first that I will share with you on slide 16 is the National Infocom Scholarship. This is a program where basically the top students can sign up for a scholarship with us, with IDA, and we support them we support the students in their studies. We pay for their tuition fees. For if it's an overseas scholarship, we will also pay for their accommodation and air ticket and things like that. But the interesting thing about this scholarship is that what a student that signs up on this scholarship is not bonded to IDA. This is a scholarship partnership that we have with all the key infocom players in the industry. For example, companies like Oracle, companies like Singapore Telecom are one of our partners in this scholarship. We have about 23 partners, and the scholars can choose to be employed by one of these companies after they graduate. So this is a close collaboration also that we have with the industry, such that the scholars, once they actually graduate, they are naturally employed into one of these top companies in Singapore. Another scholarship program that we have, that we introduced this year, is actually the Integrated Infocom Scholarship, which is on slide 17. These are targeted more at the diploma and the O-level students. So not so much at the university level, but at the lower level. So we, as you can see, as I shared with you earlier, the diploma holders are also one. We employ many diploma holders in the industry, and hence we have actually introduced this scholarship to bring them on board. Next, on slide 18, the Infocom Career Possibilities Program is another program that we have put in place to attract top talent to the industry. This basically, we are looking at organizing field trips to the partner companies. We have things like MRT ads, advertising campaigns. We have career talks to the students. We have basically quite a widespread of programs that reaches out to the students to educate them on the career possibilities, the opportunities within the industry. Next, on slide 19, basically I will cover on the talent development in institutions. What we do here is we actually work very closely with the universities and the polytechnics in Singapore. On slide 20, how we work with the universities. Basically, we engage them with the industry partners to ensure that their curriculum being taught in universities are up to date. We ensure that there are industry internship attachments, even some of them are posted overseas as well. So we try to facilitate some of these industry and university engagement to ensure that our curriculum remains current and relevant for the industry. And once the students graduate, they will be industry ready. The next program that I have on slide 21 is the Enhanced Learning in Infocom Technology, or ELITE for short. It is also part of our initiative to develop industry-ready undergraduates. So this is a program on industry attachment, mentorship, as well as training, skills development. So we fund some of these top students to be attached to the industry, to go for overseas attachments, as well as training. Next, on slide 22, I will be focusing on really the professional side of our programs. The first on the plate is actually the National Infocom Competency Framework. We've actually started the development of this framework sometime in 2005. The idea is really mapping all the Infocom jobs that we have within the nation, and to identify the competencies needed for each of these jobs. Ultimately, this framework becomes a benchmark, a reference point for companies as well as training providers, and as they develop the curriculum in the development of training programs for the professionals. So we currently have actually launched the framework, and we have quite a comprehensive framework with close to about 300 Infocom job roles identified, and it covers from the traditional job roles in software development, in infrastructure, network, IT services, all the way to job roles in the business domains. Currently, we have 3 business domains, one of which is the financial services. We also have healthcare, and the third is actually in digital media. We have actually launched that, and our next phase of the framework is actually looking at some of these niche areas, in areas things like green computing, cloud computing, service science, engineering. So these are some of the fairly niche areas that we are looking at for competency framework development. Another of our program on slide 24 is the Critical Infocom Technology Resource Program. This is basically a training incentive program where we have a grant to the professionals for them to constantly upgrade themselves. So when the professionals take up a training course, we will actually fund a certain percentage of the course fees. Recently, we have also introduced what we call the absentee payroll, where we will fund some of the salary costs of these trainees when they are away from work, from the office. This will hopefully encourage companies to also want to send their trainees for training, their employees for training. Next, on slide 25, is the Infocom Training and Attachment Program, ITAP for short. This is actually an economic downturn measure that we have put in place. It is a training and attachment program. So, of course, with the economy, we wanted the companies to continue with their development, with their growth, and to continue to bring in employees to the company. So what we do is to provide a stipend to companies when they bring in employees. So let's say a company wants to hire another 2 more staff, they can actually apply for this grant, where we will pay a fixed amount of stipend per month over a period of a year or so. Okay, so this is an economic downturn measure. So we will monitor the situation of the economy, and if the economy recovers, we will actually remove this scheme. Another of our programs that we have is on slide 26, we call the Techno Strategies Program. This program basically focuses on developing Infocom professionals with the business domain skills. So we will actually be conducting workshops, conferences on fairly specific areas to the domains. You know, some of the areas that we focus on so far are the financial services, healthcare, digital media, retail, tourism, and hospitality. So this again is an alignment with our Infocom manpower needs as we move towards more business domain skills. Next, on slide 27 is the Infocom Leadership and Development Program. This is similar to ITAD, it's just that for iLead, for this program, we focus on niche areas. This is not an economic downturn program. This is actually about long-term capability development. We would fund companies to bring in employees on a short-term basis on projects, and we will fund them a stipend, and this will hopefully allow companies to impart some of these skills to these trainees for the 6 months or 12 months, after which the trainees or the employees walk away with certain skills and they become more relevant to the industry. Many of these areas that we fund are on the very high level, high valued skills. So things like, for example, green computing is not a skill that many of our professionals have, and this is an area that we would be prepared to fund under the iLead program. So these are some of the programs that we have in the Infocom Manpower Development Work Plan, and I think at this juncture I would be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I think we will have definite. Okay. Okay, I think that at this time we will definitely have some questions. Please feel free to address them.
Hello again. I do have some questions. Well, your presentation is like a wow thing for us because you do have a lot of programs going on for the improving of the knowledge of your manpower, but I have a question. What is the industry's role in upgrading the knowledge of the manpower? Does it anyhow participate or invest in educational programs? And if yes, what is the percentage of the government to business investment? Thank you.
Okay. Most of our programs are rolled out in consultation with the industry. We have, I think, very strong partnership with the industry. As I shared with you earlier, even the scholarship program that we have is not a scholarship to IDA, it is a scholarship with the industry. So we fund students in their education so that they will be employed by the MNCs, by the local big companies in Singapore, and some of these companies are even user companies, meaning the banks and the hospitals, for example. So that's one. Even for example, another area that we actually engage the industry is on the competency framework. The competency framework is done with like 10 committees with representation from the industry. It is a framework developed by the industry for them to articulate the skills that they want back to the universities, back to the training providers. And we've engaged like hundreds of industry members to share with us their needs in terms of manpower, and basically to articulate them through the framework. So even for the training, everything that we do, even working with the schools, we actually bring the partners to the schools, be it the universities or to the high schools, the secondary schools. IDA basically play that role of bringing the education sector closer with the industry partners, and that's how we see our role.
Then a different question. Does the business invest in education? You invest a lot for the business sake. Does the business invest in education?
Yes. IDA doesn't fund all of it. Our policy has always been a co-funding policy. IDA usually fund about 50%. For example, in our training incentive program, CITRAP, we actually fund up to 50%. Of course, recently with the economic downturn, we funded up to 80%. But once the economy improves, we will actually hold that back and bring it down to the 50% funding that we usually do. Yeah. So it's about 50% of funding is from the government.
Then may I have another question? You have a lot of quantity measurements of students, graduates. Do you have any quality measurements of their skills? Thank you.
Currently, we don't have that in terms of the quality measurement, but which is why I think we have the competency framework in place. That would, I think, help us to measure, that was set as a benchmark. We have actually launched that framework only in 2008, which was last year. That will be a guiding principle in, I think, looking at, not just the numbers. Previously, what we do is we look at how many people we train, but now we actually will be looking that as a reference point, a common benchmark for us to look at really where that training is and where the training needs are. So moving forward, we would be focusing a lot more on the quality measurements.
About quality measurements, do you have some employability indicators? I think that indirectly it can be used as a quality measurements as much graduates are employed. After graduation, we can judge about the quality, I think.
Yeah.
Does it make any sense?
Yes, it does. Sorry? We do have employability fee. Yes, we do capture employability.
It's quite high, it's about 95-98%, higher than the above average.
Okay. It's about 95 to 98% of our graduates actually get employed. Yeah, we do have some of those, yes.
Okay, thanks. More questions, I think, going on?
Hi, Doina Nistra, USAID Seed Project. My question about the competency framework, you said you finished it in 2008. How long did it take this effort? So when did you start to finish in 2008?
We started in about 2005, so it's taken us about 3 years to actually launch the framework in 2008. But it is not a framework that has ended. We have only launched it with about 200